So, if you've been following what is at least the beginnings of what I think is going to be a very, very interesting public inquiry into the whole COVID, uh, or at least how the government handled COVID, from starting from David Cameron, covering, of course, Boris, Liz Truss, etc. All this stuff seems to be what I think is going to be one revelation after another. And there has been a lot of speculation that one of the reasons that the cabinet doesn't want to sort of release these WhatsApp messages and like the personal diaries of Johnson, etc., during that time was because if it is released, there will be some very explosive revelations, potentially even taking down Rishi Sunak. Hence why the Cabinet Office has been very reluctant to actually release these. Now, this has moved very quickly in literally the last 24 hours. So by the time this video comes out, it could have all have moved again. This is how bizarre this is going on. But I will take you from this current story just to, well, where we are at the moment and potentially what could be coming up today at about 4 o'clock. So, once again, this video, when it comes out, might be out of date. But to be honest, so far, this story of what is unfolding is, well, it's just sheer madness. But, dear me, I didn't think there would be this state of play. But it is at the moment, seems to be a very interesting game of tennis between Johnson and Sunak. And trust me, at the moment, Johnson has just served towards Sunak, and the ball is now firmly in his court. And it's just, what does Sunak do now? So, before we get into that, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There is also the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club down below as well. So, let's fill you all in where we are, how we are, and where we are currently, and potentially what on earth could happen beyond the realms of 4 o'clock this very evening. So, for those of you who know, we've got the COVID inquiry coming up. It is a big public inquiry. And especially a public inquiry has a lot of far-reaching powers, especially power to go, we want to see that document. Because we want to see if it's relevant to what we are looking at and to see if we can use it in this inquiry. And here's the thing. The cabinet, right from the word go, has said, we're not really that too interested in sort of giving you Johnson's WhatsApps and his diaries that was involved, because especially the excuse at the time came from Johnson was that they felt that if they handed this over, that it was too much personal information and that this would not be able for future ministers to be able to have personal policy discussions. But depending what's being discussed, we'd have to know if what is being, talked about is having an impact on the pandemic response, which is precisely why the person leading this inquiry has asked for it, because they are the ones who get to determine the relevance of what is being put forward into the inquiry. So they're the ones that get to decide, not Boris Johnson, not Rishi Sunak. And until very, very recently, we were highly suspecting that it was Johnson who was holding this stuff back. He then came out in a Sky News interview at an airport saying, "Oh no, you don't understand. I'm being stitched up. This is all untrue." With again Rishi Sunak saying, "Oh, we've handed over thousands of documents to the inquiry. It's fine. There's more than enough stuff there to let them get on with. They don't really need this stuff." But of course, you cannot say that to someone who's leading this type of public inquiry. If they asked for it, they get it. And one of the things that a lot of legal experts, if you've seen them commenting about this, that says, well, look, if you challenge this legally, you haven't got a leg to stand on. You will lose. And a lot of speculation is, of course, that they're trying to delay this section of the COVID inquiry because, well, it's highly possible we could be looking at a general election next year. COVID inquiry is going to be huge. As I've said before, I think there's going to be revelation after revelation after revelation about all this, about just how bad the mismanagement that the Tories were responsible for. So you can see there's the desperation not to release it. But in the past, couple of hours, we've had apparently a reconciliation between Sunak and Johnson. How that went down is anyone's guess. But coming out of this, Johnson has now said, I've handed over all my diaries, my WhatsApps, they have it. But also, prior to that, Johnson had turned around and said, well, I might not have all those communications. And then he turned around and said, oh, no, actually, here they all are. The Cabinet Office has got them, which is where we are currently. Because now, Rishi Sunak, Johnson has put Rishi Sunak in a very interesting position. Because if Sunak doesn't hand this stuff over, at that point, that's when he gets in trouble. Not Johnson, Sunak. And if Sunak doesn't hand them over, then out come the judges. They'll come out and say, hey, look, you've got to hand this stuff over. We've asked for it. We're the ones who get to determine the relevance of what happened and what's being talked about, whether it is applicable to or not to our, public investigation into all this. So Sunak's deadline is at 4:00 today. Will he hand them over? Will he hand them over? Who knows? Chances are he's been frantically looking through them because as many people suspect that there's stuff in there which might take him down. And hey, if you're Boris Johnson and you've just gone, well, actually, there's no downside to me handing over these. Just here, take them. Take them. That's what could have potentially happened. Will this happen? Who knows? Will we end up in a going to court over this to see, the Cabinet Office versus the sort of the judge saying, hey, I want those documents, you need to hand them over, and having to have a judge having to order the Cabinet Office and Sunak to hand over those documents? It could be, I'm not going to lie, it could be a very, very interesting 24 hours. It could be a very interesting 24 hours to see what happens if Sunak decides to or not hand these over. But if he hands them over, well, then we get to see what the inquiry makes of all those diaries and all those WhatsApps. So, yeah. Roller coaster, absolute roller coaster. And bear in mind, the inquiry has barely even started. It really kicks off in about 2 weeks' time where we get to see Cameron and Osborne interviewed. So, trust me, this is but the start of potentially a very, very long inquiry, which is going to absolutely embarrass the Tories again and again and again. So hold on, people, because this ride is just starting. So, as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And, of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And, of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.